My grandfather died 5 months before I was born. B me. B3. Swinging on swing set in backyard. Every time I come forward feel distinct tickling sensation on bare feet. Years later when I was 16 mom and grandmother independently confirmed that I used to pull my feet in and laugh as if someone was tickling me. B me. B8. Helping dad re-shingle the roof. Can get onto roof from my front bedroom window. When dad is not looking I climb onto roof which he forbid. I step out and lose my grip, begin running uncontrollably down the roof. Reach the edge and feel something hard hit my stomach and push me down onto the roof. Dad flips because he sees me sitting on edge of roof. B me. B15. Helping grandma move. Going through old photos. Pictures of grandpa in the war. Look through all of them. Read his letters. Keep it secret from grandma. Stay up to 2 a.m. reading letters and diary by bedside lamplight. At 2 a.m. hear 2 big knocks on closed bedroom door and hear a man's voice say lights out private. B me. B21. Want to get married to girl. Thought she was the one. Whole family agrees. Grandma gives me her wedding ring. Big door slam from upstairs when she says this. Fast forward to dinner with GF. I propose. As I kneel down wine bottle spills on her. It was in the center of the table. Fast forward to wedding, she said yes. Hot day, church door open to let air flow. No wind that day. Priest says whole objections thing. Solid heavy oak church door slam shut. Someone opens them up. Priest repeats himself. Door slam again. I stand dumbfounded. Run off altar, jump in car and drive away. Never got married to her. Found out months later she had been cheating on me with my, now ex, best friend for years. Was my grandpa being a bro? I had this really scary situation. And it sounds absolutely fake, but I'll just tell you guys anyway. B 3 years ago. Wake up at about 3 in the morning. Go to the kitchen to get something to drink. Upon entering the kitchen, I see something stand there. Scared shitless, wasn't able to move or say anything. Just staring at the thing. It was about as tall as me, a bit higher than 6 foot, had long limbs, very long fingers, arms held similar to a praying mantis's raptorial legs, if that makes sense. Body was a pale sort of brown-gray and overall relatively thin, but with a slightly rounded belly. But the head, I will never forget the head. Like a mix between a hammerhead shark and a human, I don't know how else to describe it. I saw no mouth, but 2 slits, I guess these were the nostrils. They looked like the blowhole of a humpback whale. I would draw it for you guys, but I can't draw for shit anyways. It appears to be looking for something. It's chattering, sort of like a guinea pig chatters mixed with some kind of clicking, but not as loud. Turns its head. Looks directly into my face. I almost shat my pants right then and there. It walks fast but calmly into the next room. Hear more chattering and then nothing. Stand there in the kitchen like an idiot, thinking about what I should do, decide to look into the living room. Nothing. From the moment I walked in on it until it disappeared, about 6 seconds passed, but it felt a lot longer. After the incident, I went to bed thinking about how the fuck it got into my house and what exactly I saw. Never told anyone about it, except my GF. I have had a few scary situations in my life, but that one was the craziest shit I've ever seen. Every time I wake up at night, I hope that the creature isn't back. Have had various paranormal encounter, I will elaborate on them if there is interest. First story. Out camping. My friends are all drunk in a tent together. Ever the antisocial, I leave and go for a walk. We are in the middle of nowhere. The area I live in is notorious for this kind of encounter. My walk takes me to a small bridge. As I reach the middle of the bridge, I make out the shape of an animal like a really big dog. But way bigger than a dog. Freeze. Bridge traps me on both sides. The beasts start coming towards me. Turn 360 degrees and run for my life. Second story. Hanging in an abandoned factory said to be haunted. Friends who told us about it also told us they found a picture of a woman in a wedding gown but threw it into the small river by the warehouse. We are in this place for like 2 hours, smoke a few fat ones. Decide to look around a bit. I shit you not, we found the photo that my other friends threw away. Thoroughly spooked at this point, we decide to push it further for more kicks. We burn the picture. Immediately, I'm being serious, a loud banging erupts through the warehouse. Like someone hammering on the walls. Shit bricks. Few minutes pass, banging stops. Investigate the entire area, but found nothing. Third tale. Staying in my grandparents' beach house. From the 1940s, barely changed since, basically all original. Late at night. In my room in bed. Begin to hear the scratching noise on all the walls, the roof, and the floor. It's so loud and angry. Absolutely terrified, convince myself it was extraterrestrials coming for me. I feel like I have these events drawn to me somehow, as I have many more stories if people are interested, as well as the area in which I live has its own long history of folklore and ghost stories. Please bear in mind these days I genuinely question my own sanity. The frequency of these happenings is not a joke. Be like 2 months ago, June 2016. Have new girlfriend, she is awesome, we get along really well. I take her on a tour of my college campus. End up having sex in a parking lot. Her father calls, got to take her back home because it's getting late. On the way back, she starts breathing heavily and very fast. I ask her if she's okay and she tells me to pull over. It's a dangerous part of the city so I don't like the idea, but she seems like she's dying so I stop the car. She starts having a panic attack, mumbling something and shaking. I hold her in my arms and tell her to follow my breath rhythm and that everything's okay. Eventually she calms down, she's fine now. She explains to me she had these attacks all her life, sometimes she hears voices and stuff and was institutionalized once. I listen to her and don't judge her because I'm a mature and awesome boyfriend. 3 weeks later a friend of mine invites me to his summer house, to get drunk as hell and swim a little. Tells me bring girlfriend along so he can meet her. Pool, sun, girlfriend, friends, alcohol, a room just for me and her. Hell yes, I'll go. Once there after an awesome day we go to our room and start having sex like stray cats. Best time of my life. PNG. Suddenly at the middle of the session she stops and stares blank at me. I'm like what's up? She pushes me away really hard. Starts screaming uncontrollably, not scared but rather angry. I'm not scared but really confused. She then looks at me, straight into my soul. Utters a phrase in Latin but with a voice that's not hers. It sounded much more rough and masculine. I know it was Latin because I'm not an idiot and could catch something like Magnus or something like that. Now I'm not confused, I'm scared. Hold her again, just like I did the first time. She seems to relax a little but then gets very tense again and pushes me away, but more gentle than the first time. Who are you? She asks. My name is Anon, your boyfriend. What's my name? You are Anon. Oh yes, I remember, I'm sorry you had to watch me like that, sometimes I kind of reboot or something, thank you. And I hold her again and she starts sobbing a little. I was really confused but didn't get scared until the Latin phrase. I believe she has something strange inside her and she doesn't even realize it. I simply reacted on instinct and tried to keep my cool because if there was a demon in front of me I wouldn't give it the pleasure of showing fear. Plus she seemed really confused too when she got back, so I simply answered her questions. Sadly we're no longer together, I don't even know if that's a good thing or not. I just miss her, she was an awesome girlfriend. Be me. Be 6 or 7 years old. 2003. Be oldest of 3 siblings at the moment. Live out in the woods, Kentucky. We played outside a lot, but my parents always told us that we didn't own the land just past our backyard and that we weren't allowed to go there. On the off chances we'd get close enough to see the land, we noticed that regular noises weren't there, like crickets chirping, or the occasional coyote howl. Also we'd see dead animals from time to time. Nothing too off-putting at this point, but I always respected my parents, like a beta yeah, so I never ventured over the proverbial fence. One day, as per usual, Dad goes to work to provide. Bright sunny mid-June day. Mom takes a spell and decided to take a nap. My first younger brother, let's call him Jack, says, "Hey, nonsense, Mom is asleep, we should explore the forest." I say, "No, they told us not to go." He disagrees and gets our younger brother to agree to go exploring. So now it's 2 versus 1, and as the eldest I wouldn't let them do something dangerous. Tried to wake Mom up, but for some strange reason, she wouldn't stir. Still breathing, snoring really, just wouldn't get up. Forgot Dad's work phone. Decide to go with them to make sure they don't get hurt. After a little while, notice Jack and youngest brother John are going straight into the woods, as far as they can get from the house. Eventually come across fallen tree. I say, "Alright, enough is enough, I can even see the house from here, let's go back before Mom wakes up and gets mad." They say that since they've already come this far they might as well keep going. They climb over the tree. Now here's where my memory goes hazy. As soon as I'm alone I lose all sense of direction and time. I'm still standing upright but I don't know where the fallen tree went, I don't know where the house is, and the sun isn't in the same place as it was before. I had a horrible gut-wrenching feeling like I was going to die. I kept calling out my 2 younger brothers' names but no matter how hard I screamed I couldn't hear myself, like the forest mutes everything else. I started going numb, I fell over and started hyperventilating. At the very last second before passing out I heard a soft voice say, "Do not worry, I am taking you to your brothers." Pass out. X amount of time passes. Wake up to people shining flashlights at me. It's pitch dark out. I figured out later that they were police. They picked me up and dropped me off at home with my 2 younger siblings. I was 8 miles away from home when they found me. My little brothers were even farther. Parents ground us for what seems like forever. I'm almost 20 now and I'm too scared to ask my parents about it, and my siblings don't remember it at all. So what do you guys think? I know it wasn't as spoopy as others, but it's all I got. Alright, I got one my mates called the dog incident. Be me, 17. Live in urban rural inland Mallee, Australia. Own 4 birds that are just outside my bedroom window. 2 cockatiels, 2 budgies. They make a lot of noise at night. Also directly outside of my window is box for pool cleaning shit. About 6 foot long and leaves a half-foot space right near where I sleep. Yard is 2 acres totally fenced off with 4 gates, all make really loud noises when opened. 3 a.m. one night. Birds are being loud assholes again. Brush it off, reckon they'll shut the hell up. Hear something big slam against the cage. Immediately slide halfway out of bed to the window and pull back blinds. New moon night, can't see shit. See something moving at the base of bird cage. Smack window, reckon that'll scare the thing off. Very wrong. Thing walks behind a box, partly obscured. Like 3 or 4 foot high, can see shoulders and part of its back behind the box. Thing lunges at window and hits it pretty freaking hard. Thing has oval head, no hair, dark eyes. Hears screaming and jumps back. Realizes screaming was me. Take a moment to process what happened. Kick window and yell to scare thing off but don't open blinds again. Birds are still going nuts. Run to parents' room crying. Something is trying to eat the birds. Dad gets broom handle and searches yard. Nothing. All gates are locked, fences untouched. I swear on my life what I saw that night wasn't a dog or a fox. I didn't see a tail and it had no hair at all. What the hell tried to eat me and my birds, /X. Second story. Me, 18. Sometime around Christmas. Mom owns Santa music box thing. Wind up the top and plays Jingle Bells. Makes a really loud clicking noise when wound up. Always got weird vibes from it. Not sure if it was the suicidal teddy bear in the sack, or Santa's 1,000-yard stare. Really freaking hot night, can't sleep. At that point on the verge of sleep but still awake. Hear Jingle Bells being played very slowly from music box, but doesn't hit final note before the loop. Rationalize, it's a hot night, and the metal jig inside it is expanding. Try to go back to sleep. Hour later. Pulled out of half sleep by end of the Jingle Bells loop playing from just outside my bedroom door. Run out of room as fast as I can, and wake up parents. Santa music box is put away. January. Me, just turned 19. Woken up by Jingle Bells playing outside my bedroom. Peek out of room. Santa music box is on kitchen table slowly turning. Faces me and stops. Santa music box is now in 2 pieces. Santa in cupboard of purgatory. Music box in spare room. Pick related. It's the music box. I cringe whenever I hear Jingle Bells now. Does anyone remember that video of the family in Tallahassee who recorded the sound coming out of the sky? I actually live in that same area and I heard it too. Live alone in a small trailer. I'm at my table reading a book and eating dinner when I hear what sounds like the distant roar of a jet engine. We'd had some really bad storms, so I figured it was probably more thunder. Sound keeps getting louder. It's definitely getting closer. Run to the door and look out at the sky, thinking maybe a plane was going down. Crap load of trees so I can see much. This noise is almost deafening now. It's like there's a freaking jet engine right on top of my house. The sound is literally making my head throb. The only thing I've ever felt that was even close to this is that feeling you get when you manually force yourself to relax your entire body. It's like I'm fighting to stay conscious. Drop like a sack of potatoes in the doorway. I can't move. It's like the sound is pinning me to the ground. I throw up. This goes on for what feels like eons. The sound swells in intensity and changes over time. By the end it sounded much more like some piece of huge industrial machinery as opposed to an engine. Super bright flash of light out of nowhere. Sound instantly stops. I called 911 and they told me a lot of people had reported the same thing and that they're not sure what's going on. Also, when I went into my backyard the next day, squirrel is lying at the base of a big tree. Figure it must have been stunned by the sound and fell and broke its neck. Go up to get a better look. Nope.exe. Whatever killed that squirrel, it wasn't a fall. Its eyes were bulging almost completely out of its skull. Looks like it suffered some kind of massive brain hemorrhage. I remember the way my head throbbed when the sound was on top of my trailer. Consider myself lucky.
Close to Dylan. There went something. What is that? That feels like it's getting very close. Where is it? There.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you so much.
They got a lot of calls, but she said we don't know if it's a tornado or not. They got tickets on the way to check it out. She said, if it is to get into a safe. Uh-oh, what was that? I don't hear it anymore, Dylan. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Whew.
I'm a 3%er. We spend a lot of time out on DNR land in Michigan when we need to shoot anything, since it's legal, and the couple of people who live within earshot don't care, since they're usually shooting stuff too. In any event, this particular event occurred in November of 2014. It was starting to get cold, so the codgers and armchair warriors decided to sit this event out. That meant there were 3 of us, one of whom only stayed for 3 hours on Friday night and then went home. The idea was to rough it from Friday to Sunday afternoon. The other guy, who we'll call Andy, was in the army in the mid to late 90s, understands land navigation using a compass and stars, and has lived in the area for most of his life. I went to military academy and have a basic understanding of orienteering. The route we chose would take us from the trailhead/rifle range into public hunting lands and loop us back around. It was about a 30-mile hike. Friday was uneventful. We rucked for about 5 miles, pitched camp and blasted away at some trees before going to bed. The next morning we got into more heavily wooded areas and began to get bogged down. It had been a while since either of us had lugged 60 pounds of gear plus a weapon through the woods. Even with the trees mostly bare due to it being November, it was slow going, given the small hills that dot that area. As evening approached, we got that spooky in the woods feeling that I'm sure many are familiar with. The fact that we were packing enough ammunition to assault a fire base was comforting, but there was always that, man, if I scream no one is going to hear it, sense in the back of my head. We were now about 18 miles into the forest. We pitched camp Saturday night, and that's when the weirdness started. We built a small fire along with a crude reflector out of fallen timber and sat down, which after marching through the forest with that much crap felt fantastic. The woods in Michigan at that time of year are dead quiet. There was almost nothing moving. So it came as some surprise when we heard branches snapping. Our immediate conclusion was that it was a poacher looking for deer. Nothing we were concerned about really. When it became apparent it was circling us, we became a little more concerned. We decided that it would be a good idea to set a watch. Andy went to sleep and I stayed up, rifle across my knees. The snapping never stopped in the 4 hours I was tending the fire. It was like clockwork. Round and round our sight without stopping. At around midnight I woke Andy and took my turn. I was awoken about 2 hours later by the sound of Andy dumping his magazine into the darkness. It was unpleasant. Disoriented slightly, I grabbed my rifle and jumped back outside in my long johns. By this time Andy had exhausted his magazine and was inserting another. It still sounded like someone was rattling off shots from a medium-caliber semi-automatic rifle in the distance. After my ears stopped ringing from the close-range gunfire, I realized with a sickening feeling that it was the snapping. It was so rapid and intense that it was difficult to discern the individual pops and snaps. It was coming from all directions, not circling. We stayed up until dawn when it tapered off, rifles in hand. The walk back to the trailhead/range was uneventful. We talked about it a bit, decided it was some sort of natural phenomena and haven't discussed it since. I have never been as frightened as I was that night in the Michigan woods in November. Alright, I got some OC here. I've never told this story before, but I think it's worth sharing. Be me. Quiet, loner kid, chilling on summer nights, not going out and drinking or hanging with friends. Decide I should start going on night walks, because, why not? Keep in mind, I love walking at night and I live really close to the beach. So I start my night walks, and this goes on for a couple of weeks. Then one night, as I'm taking my usual route, I hit the beach at about 10 p.m. typical time. It's pitch black, and it's always a ghost town, everyone is asleep by 10 p.m. As I first hit the beach, and I'm walking in the sand towards the ocean for about 50. When all of a sudden, I see what looked like a giant black bird flying near where the waves hit the sand. Keep in mind, I'm still quite a distance away from the actual ocean, but I see this flying creature and I'm obviously freaked out of my freaking mind because of all the damn spoopy things I read and watch. I figured, I can't necessarily walk back the way I came, because you have to cross train tracks, a road where peeps drive really quick, and an eerie freaking forest that has huge trees and is pitch black. You have to cross all of these damn things just to hit the beach, where I live. Screw that, if I'm going to go back. My usual path involves me crossing the RR, the sketchy street, and the huge eerie forest. Then as I hit the beach, I would follow along the ocean walking south for 2 to 3 miles before reaching the main city again. So, me being the 17-year-old that I'm, decided to keep walking my usual path, and I am still seeing this flying creature. Within seconds I guess this freaking thing reshapes into a freaking dragon doing a figure 8. Then it suddenly stops and lands, stands upright, and starts walking like a freaking human along ocean going north. Remember, I walk south along the ocean. It's dark out, the moon isn't present, but the glow of the nearby city helped me see the silhouette. I tried to shine my flashlight on it, so I could see if it was actually human. But it's still just a dark freaking figure. The sand and the waves around the creature were illuminated, and I could definingly see the colors of these things surrounding the creature. I've met up with and shined my flashlight on many people who had worn a black jacket, and flashlight would still shine on dark clothing, and I could confirm that other peeps had definingly worn black. But my flashlight still couldn't shine on this creature. It was like pointing my flashlight at the night sky. It definingly wasn't human, and I had the worst feeling about it. I'm glad that the whole time I was shining my light on it, it was at least walking along the ocean, away from me. I wanted to run to my intended destination, about 2 miles south of the beach. I live on the west coast, but I was afraid that if I were to turn my back on this creature or entity, it would come straight for me or something. So, I kept my back pointed away from the ocean, walking south, and having my head turned to the creature. Eventually, it walked far enough where I felt safe to turn my back and sprint to the destination. Soon, I reached my destination, and the typical number of peeps were having bonfires there. I felt a lot better after seeing people. Considering that when I saw the flying thing, I was literally alone within a 2-mile radius. If I screamed, no one would hear me. All in all, I'm not sure what I saw. Maybe the Mothman? A demon? A witch that could transform? I don't know. In the end, I'm just glad it never turned towards me, and I'm glad I never saw its eyes. Well, I've already made a thread about it, but I think it'll be better if I just post it here. So there I was, in my crappy apartment, minding my own business, bored as shit on a Saturday night. So, as I sometimes do, I go on a sex chat. It hardly ever works, but I've gotten lucky on some occasions and actually gotten some fairly attractive women. I can count them with the fingers of one hand, though. Still, it beats doing nothing, so there I go, expecting disappointment. And disappointment is what I get. After a couple of hours trying to talk with women, only for them to leave midway through the conversation or just repeating the same shit, age, description and all that, in the general chat, I grow frustrated and bored. I might not be getting any action tonight, but at least I'll have fun. So, I refresh the page and use a female nickname. I'm instantly flooded by desperate guys like me, and I screw around with them for a while. After a while I get another idea. I say my city and ask if someone in the chat is from around there. It so happens, one guy is. So we make chit-chat for a while. He asks me horny shit and I make myself look the most mundanely sexy woman of the world. I can practically feel his boner through the screen. So, I play my final card. I ask him to meet, right now, in my home. He immediately agrees and asks me if he can bring a friend. I tell him yes, knowing this will be funnier if they're two. I then proceed to give him my exact address. That is, my street, my apartment building's door, and my floor. However, I tell him my door is that of my neighbor, because I'm not completely retarded. Completely being the operative word. Anyway, the point is seeing if he'll actually come, and see him through my peephole, because I am honestly curious about how a person who agrees to go to strangers' home at 3 a.m. with a vague promise of sex would look like. I mean, for all he knew, I could be a serial killer. Anyway, I leave my apartment and go rush downstairs to open the street door so he can come in without using the entry phone. I wait for him for 20 minutes checking YouTube. In the meantime, when I get a notification from the chat telling me he's here, I rush as quietly as possible to my door, and there he is. I try to discern him in the darkness, and he looks like a 20-something-year-old guy, thin, medium height. I can't really make him out. I can only see his back, so that doesn't help. I'm kind of chuckling when I notice something. He is holding a knife behind his back. An actual kitchen knife. It's fucking huge, as long as his forearm. My blood goes cold for a second. I'm wondering what the fuck is going on for about a second, when it hits me. I stand there, quiet like a bitch, just stuck to the peephole. He takes out his cell phone and texts something. I hear from my bedroom the ring the chat uses to notify you when someone sends you a private message. He's probably urging me to open the door. At this point I'm kind of frozen. He then turns around, and I want to kick myself in the balls. Did he hear the fucking computer, I wonder? He comes closer and closer, and tries to look through the peephole. I duck, almost dropping to the floor. I crawl towards my door as quietly as possible, hoping he doesn't send another message. I finally reach my computer and pull the cable, cutting its power and shutting it off. I stand there in the darkness of my room for a while, trying to distinguish any sounds in the silence. After a few minutes, I gather the courage to get back to the peephole. I walk there as stealthily as possible. I take a look, fully expecting to see his goddamned eyes staring back at me. There's nothing but the empty hallway. I decide to go back to bed, not without keeping a kitchen knife by my side. He still hasn't returned, and I hope he never does. I keep wondering about his friend. I never saw anyone else in that hallway. Where the hell was he? He might have made him up, maybe he just kept him downstairs, or maybe he was blocking the stairs or something. I have no idea. I keep watching over my shoulder when I walk around my neighborhood. Alright, something I figured I'd share. Live in house in rural-ish Pretzelreich. Built in the 40s, hardwood everything, furnished basement, etc. Moved into the place with parents around 2000. My room was directly above the garage, and always cold. Always had trouble sleeping in that room because I would swear I could hear voices and whispers randomly during the night. Gets bad enough that I ended up getting one of those big box fans that makes a racket and moves a lot of air. Fan provides white noise to finally be able to sleep. Never comfortable in the room at night, never a problem during the day, room was always really bright with natural light. Fast forward to kid sister being born. Upstairs attic is renovated, I move in upstairs by myself. Little sister's crib is in my old room across the hall. Parents keep complaining about how there must be interference on the baby monitor because they keep hearing female voices. Mom thinks it's something up with the monitors and buys new ones. Same thing keeps happening. I'm the technically minded one, so it's put on me to figure out WTF is up. So there were two baby monitors in the room, the new one on a lower frequency, and the older on a higher frequency. Keep one in my room during the summer, and stay up at night with it while playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. First few nights I'm listening, I hear what sounds like wind being blown on the microphone. Disregard it, thinking it's interference for a few nights. Almost get ready to give up and tell my parents it's just too much interference. One night my mom is out, as my aunt wasn't doing too good. Dad is heavy sleeper and generally would only get up if the noises on the monitor got to the screaming baby needs to be changed. Half-heartedly playing Roller Coaster Tycoon while chatting with friends over MSN. Suddenly start to hear noises I've never heard before on the monitor and crank the volume. Chorus of voices cooing my sister's name despite her being at an age where dada is a struggle. Suddenly DEFCON 1, if this was interference from outside sources, they definitely wouldn't be saying my sister's first name, plus the fact that there were distinctly different voices. trying to make out hushed whispers from unfamiliar voices, but only thing that continues to stand out is sister's first name, every few minutes. Big brother mode kicks in, run downstairs with literally a giant wrench as my only weapon, think exact copy of TF2 engineer wrench. Sister sound asleep, but crib rocking ever so slightly. Really unnerved, but wake dad and have him bring her in with him. Made up some story about her coughing and that the room was drafty and I didn't want her getting sick. Go back up to my room, more than kinda weirded out. Silence on monitor, go back to chatting with friends on MSN. About 2 hours go by, it's around 3 in the morning, when through my headset I hear something that distinctly doesn't make sense. Pop goes the Weasel music box in her room playing by itself. Soft, distant, but recognizable. It was coming across horribly distorted on the baby monitor with unintelligible whispering in the background. Screw that noise, not going to investigate, turn the monitor off. Give explanation to mom that she just has to keep her in parents' bedroom from now on, because I can't fix the problem, very skeptical type. Well, so a few years pass and my sister starts growing up, and around 5 or 6 she starts asking about the 3 mean ladies that would stand around her at night that scared her. Hear her talking about this after years of having forgotten about it and internally noped the hell out, but nothing spoopy had happened lately, and she had moved back into my old room. Fast forward to now, and she tells me that even when she has earbuds in, she will hear fierce commanding voices that generally are no more than 2 or 3 words long, and is constantly weirded out by it, and goes out of her way to blast music to fall asleep. I've done the research on this house, and despite looking into it, there have been no deaths in the house, or on the property as far as anyone knows, still living here because low student debts, but lately there has been stuff revolving around her with unexplained voices at night. Also, this may be related as it happens a lot at home, but also elsewhere. I have a bad tendency of walking into rooms and light bulbs going out, or just popping and shattering into pieces. For quite some time I've just assumed it was either my house being haunted or faulty wiring, but it seems to follow me everywhere. Walking/driving under street lamps and having them go out the second I pass under them, being at friends' houses and light bulbs going out, or popping, and even at work it seems to happen. At this point it seems way too coincidental and I have no explanation for it. Any of you guys got any ideas? It's like 3/4 of the time a bulb will go out, it just dies while I'm under it, or near it, and the other quarter of the time they'll just pop and shatter into shards, and I'm sick of having to use a potato to take out each and every broken light bulb. If anyone has any explanations I'd love to hear. Alright, I'll post one of my own stories to keep the thread alive. I'm not gonna green text it, because the story is a little long. So, a little bit of background. This happened about 8 years ago in Leafland, on Vancouver Island, where I moved with my mom for a short period of time when I was 12. Her side of the family lived on the island, while we lived on the mainland. Now, my grandfather was in the army when he was alive, and he left quite a few guns behind. Sadly, I wasn't old enough to go hunting with him while he was still alive. Okay, on to my story. It was summer break, and I had just graduated from elementary school. After the shitty little ceremony, my mother told me that my Uncle John wanted to take me hunting. I had shot a rifle a few times before, but this would be my first time ever actually shooting at a living thing, so I was pretty nervous, but also a little excited. The day finally arrived and my uncle picked me up in his truck. We were going to a pretty big stretch of woods, and we would be camping there for 3 days. The only supplies we had with us were some basic rations, water, and 3 rifles. I'm not exactly a commando, so I can't really tell you the make and model of them, but I know we had 2.22s and 1.308. From my experience with shooting the .308 and getting knocked on my ass, I asked my uncle what we needed such a powerful gun for. He said it was just in case we saw a bear, but something in his voice told me he wasn't telling me the whole truth. My grandfather was a very spiritual man, and I'm inclined to believe that he passed down some of his stories and beliefs to his children. My mother has had an OBE and seen a few ghosts, but those are different stories for another day. I'm half Cree Aboriginal on my father's side, so I had heard stories of the things that stalked the Canadian wilderness. We unpacked our stuff and started looking for a good spot to set up camp. After about a half hour of searching, we found the perfect spot of flat earth. We set up camp and loaded our rifles before heading out to try and bag a deer or something. The first day was completely uneventful, and we ended up just catching some fish with sharpened sticks and ate those. I had a feeling I would be sick of fish by the end of this. I'm a fairly light sleeper, so it's no surprise that I woke up in the middle of the night. I rubbed my eyes and sat up in my tent, realizing I had to piss. I moved to unzip my tent flap, but stopped as I heard something outside. I heard the sound of footfalls, and quiet, ragged breathing. Like an idiot, I assumed it was my uncle and slowly zipped down the flap on my tent. I zipped it down just enough for me to peek outside to see if my uncle was still out there, as I needed privacy to pee. What I saw out there was not my uncle. It probably stood at about 7 feet, as it was taller than our tents, and had oily black fur that glistened in the moonlight. I let out a low whimper and slowly zipped my tent back up. The breathing stopped for a second, and then started to get closer. When it was mere inches away from my tent, the breathing stopped. For a few seconds, I thought the thing had left, and I just didn't hear it because I was so afraid. Then, it began to press its face against my tent. Judging from the outline, it had a muzzle that was slim like a fox, but it was much longer. It was at this point that I noticed how much this thing reeked. Being a sheltered city kid, I had never had to smell anything dead before, but as I've come to learn, that's what the thing smelled like. It smelled like the corpse of a skunk that was left to bake in the summer sun for a week. I curled up in my sleeping bag and covered my head, hoping it would leave. After what felt like an eternity, the thing skulked back into the woods. At this point I no longer needed to pee. After changing my pants and getting a restful half hour of sleep, my uncle came to wake me up. As we went to leave, he stopped and looked at the side of my tent. Danny, what the hell is that stain? I asked him what he was talking about, and he pointed to a slightly red stain on the side of my tent. It looked like saliva. My uncle went up to the stain and tried to get a whiff of it. He stood up and crinkled his nose before going and retrieving the .308. I didn't bother asking why. I wasn't having fun anymore. I just wanted this trip to be over and go home, but my uncle wanted to at least stay for one more day. That day, we actually ended up killing something. My uncle borrowed my .22 and shot a goose right out of the sky. I was pretty impressed, and excited that we would be eating something that wasn't fish. I was pretty disappointed when I learned that the goose had been mainly eating fish, and ended up tasting like them. My uncle had been pretty quiet the whole day, so I was surprised when he looked at me and asked, "Danny, have you ever seen something that you just can't explain? Something that shouldn't exist in this world?" I lied and said no, but I'm sure he didn't believe me. "I'm going to go try and get us something for dinner, but I'm going alone. Don't follow me. If I'm not back within an hour, call the police on my phone." After that, he set up a fire and left. I began to get impatient, so I started looking for games to play on his phone. It was a shitty little BlackBerry, so the best I could get was solitaire. However, I didn't get to play long before I heard rustling in the brush near the fire. I grabbed my .22 and aimed toward the noise and saw the creature from before. It made frantic gibbering noises, like it was trying to communicate, before running away from the camp, leaving a trail of black blood behind it. It turned out that my uncle had shot the thing, but it ended up running away. About a half hour later, my uncle came back to camp, covered in cuts and bruises. "Come on, let's pack up our stuff, we're leaving." I asked why, and he told me it wasn't safe there anymore. We drove back to my place in relative silence, until he dropped me off and drove back the way he came. My uncle never came out of those woods, and his body hasn't been found. I miss that old bastard. This is something that's always made me really paranoid at night. Sure enough, it's a camping story. Me, 21, 2 years ago. Went on camping trip to Red River Gorge, Kentucky. Me, 2 friends, Pat and John's cousin Carter. Before the trip, Pat thought it was a cool idea to brew his own cheap moonshine and fill an entire rolly cooler with mason jars full of it. Spend most of the day packing and hyping the trip. Head down to Red River Gorge and make it around 5 p.m. with Pat. Drive around for an hour before finding the spot. John and Carter are already there and set up about half a mile in or so. Right as we pull up to the parking area, we come across a police checkpoint. I completely forgot about the moonshine. Pat's calmer than hell, good with cops. He rolls down the window. "Hey officer, what's all this about?" "Just making sure the kids coming through here are being safe." "Why wouldn't we be safe?" Hear the cop behind them interject quietly with "No, don't tell them," or something odd like that. "Just making sure nobody is getting into trouble at all." "Now you wouldn't have anything on you we'd need to know about, would you?" My heart drops as soon as he says it. Realize that in the same cooler, we have burgers and bacon. Drug dog gets out of the car, circles ours. Actually thinking he'll signal because of the burger meat like a tard. No signal, instant relief. Cop chimes back in, "Y'all kids be safe on your way in, try to make it to your camp before it gets dark." "Sure thing, officer." We drive literally 30 seconds up the road to the parking spot. Still nervous about the moonshine, even after we got away with it. So important. I don't drink. Just don't care for it. I remember being really mad at Pat for a little bit because I didn't want to go to jail for things I didn't even partake in. Unload our junk, collect our gear and prepare to march out. Pat thinks it'd be cool to haul the entire damn cooler through the woods. Before we head out, I turn around and see that the police checkpoint is just gone. No lights, sounds, anything. Turn back around, Pat's calling John to let him know we're starting the hike. With a freaking cooler. John says don't bring it. I really wish we hadn't. Pat says it's full of shine and he didn't brew it for nothing. Good luck arguing with Pat. We begin hiking. Luckily Pat wanted to drag the cooler around. It's taking us forever and it's getting dark. Bust out the flashlights to see where we're going. Keep having to stop and lift the cooler over shit. Really freaking heavy. Finally, it's too dark to see without the flashlights, have to keep 'em on. John calls us. "Hey guys, I think we hear you coming." Shout something. Pat yells, "You're a bitch." As soon as he yells, I hear something skitter in the leaves on the ridge to our right. Shine my light instinctually. Nothing. Spook is starting to set in. "Did you hear me, John?" "No, I guess we heard someone else." "Okay, well, we're gonna keep moving." Pat hangs up and we continue to haul the damn cooler along. An hour probably goes by before John calls us again. "Where the hell are you guys?" "We're following the path. I know we aren't lost." "Oh, I think I can see your flashlight, wave it around." Pat does. "Yeah, that's totally you guys. We're coming up to help." Hangs up. We stop to rest and wait for them. A few seconds pass, then we hear them walking towards us up the hill, crunching leaves. And then past us. Pat speaks up, "Hey, where are you guys? We're back this way." I hear John's voice in front of us. Definitely spooked because we heard something walk at what seemed like a human pace right past us. Thoroughly spooked, ready to set our shit up and be around other people. John and Carter both walk up and help us bring the shit down. Right before we leave the campsite, Pat slips and drops the cooler down some hill. Half the mason jars of shine are shattered. Pat's pissed. Gather what we can, load it back up and take the rest of it to the camp. As we walk away, I swear I hear something shuffle down the hill. We drop the shine in and move around. Spook meter full. I say, "Guys, did you hear that? I swear to God something's moving around out there." Carter, having been on many camping trips assures me it's just deer scoping us out at a safe distance. Somewhat reassuring, but why would a deer walk down a steep hill into some cramped hole? Time passes, we set our shit up, light a fire, start cooking and get to drinking. All of us are sitting around the campfire just shooting the shit. Look around and notice an oddly shaped shadow next to a big rock by a stream, maybe 50 feet away, if that. Figure it's my brain playing tricks on me from a filled spook meter. Don't really say anything. Every few minutes I glance over at the creepy shadow, almost hoping it moves to confirm my suspicions. It doesn't, thank goodness. Carter gets up to take a piss in the stream and walks towards where the spooky shadow was. Eyes glued to Carter, totally nervous. He pisses, turns back around and walks back to us. The freaking shadow is gone. Freaking gone. Spook meter rupture. Carter sits back down and says, "Hey, did you guys spill any shine over by the stream? None of us have even been over there until now, so no." Smells like it. Why? For the rest of the night, I keep my eyes over where the shadow was, see nothing. At this point, everyone but me is hammered. Finally calm my nerves as we all lay down in our tents. Everyone is in their own tent. Have trouble staying asleep because it's cold. Keep waking up through the night. Unzip my tent to see Pat standing right outside. "Whoa dude, what are you doing out there? It's really cold and I don't have a blanket, can I sleep next to you?" "Sure, let me take a piss first." Leave tent. Pat sits down outside the tent. Walk around the other side of my tent because screw the stream, I ain't walking over there. Piss, turn back around, see Pat standing up by the stream, probably pissing as well. Go back in the tent. Pat's in the tent. Nope. Get in the tent and slowly zip the tent up, leave a space open to see. Not going to sleep with someone out there. Take a peek, realize it's not someone. See a tall, lanky figure, maybe 7 feet tall, stretched arms, skinny legs, and what looked like long hair. For those of you who have played Darkest Dungeon, think of a skinnier, lankier ghoul. Petrified. Can't take my eyes away from it. Look over at Pat. Fast asleep. Look back outside, it's sitting in the same spot where I saw the spooky shadow. It's been there the whole freaking time. Suddenly, a waft of moonshine hits my nose. It's coming from outside. Put the pieces together. This thing likes our alcohol. It's probably what skittered after the shine when we dropped it. Too scared to move, keep my eyes trained on it. After what felt like hours, the thing stood up again. It lifted its arm up and shook it around. Then it dropped something, crouched down and bolted through the stream and through whatever was over there. I didn't know what to do. Sat there until morning, everyone wakes up. Say nothing about it before investigating the area. Look around, see our empty mason jars spread around, could have been the dudes because drunk. Walk over to where the shadow was at night. There's a divot in the sand, what I only could think of as a butt print. It was just sitting there. Look to my right, one empty mason jar lies. Pick it up and smell it. No trace of alcohol, but it smelled freaking foul. Dumbfounded. Not really sure what to do. Don't tell anyone what I saw. Nobody talks about it, probably didn't see it or can't remember the night prior. Go to cook breakfast, surprisingly, the leftover meat is still there. Eat, pack up, haul out. Pat and the dudes want to stay another night. I make up some bullshit story about how I have a school project to work on. Pat reluctantly agrees to drive me home. On the way home, I try to spark a convo about last night. Next time, bring a blanket so I don't have to spoon your gay ass. Dude, whatever, I didn't know it would be that cold. It's freaking October, dude, come on. Whatever, I'll take one when I go back. You're going back? You're not gonna stay home? Nah, I'm gonna meet back up with them and stay another night at a different spot. Good. Good? Yeah man, don't go back to where we were, I think some other campers drank the rest of our shine while we were asleep. Really? Damn, I thought it was the others. Yeah, just pick a spot further away. Sure dude. I froze up and never told him, or any of them, what I saw that night. I wasn't drunk, I wasn't sleep deprived, I know I saw something out there. Maybe it was some tall, skinny guy, but I highly doubt it, and the hair, and the fact it sat there all night. I don't know, I'm convinced it wasn't a person. The worst part is that we weren't even that far in. Sure, it was about a half-mile in, but it's not like the campsites were in the sticks or something. Red River Gorge is a common tourist attraction. Needless to say, I haven't gone camping since then. So these things happen to me till now. All of them at my home, so it's double the scare. Part number 1. Be me, living in Eastern Europe in a distant mountain village with roughly 400 people. Dense pine tree forest surrounds the area. Forest sometimes so dense that you can hardly see by daylight. Whatever, enough foreplay. Year is 1999, maybe 6. Our house is at the border of the woods. The chicken enclosure is in the forest partially. Own a dog. Really like my dog. Often walk it in the forest with leash. Sometimes I take it off to be free and do dog stuff all around. He always returns. One day walk Mr. Dog as usual. I take off the leash. Dog runs off, disappears in the tall grass. I'm only 6 at the time, so probably not so tall, but it looked like. I wait for him. Call his name. Nothing. Everything goes silent. Like really silent. No bird sound, nothing. Start going in the direction my dog disappeared. Roughly 20 meters away from me, pool of blood and the mangled collar of my dog. Run home and tell my parents. They forbid me to go into the forest for some time, and I have to get home in daylight every day for the rest of the month. Did not think much about this for a few years. Same place. Be me, 14. Friends be like, Anon, let's go camping in the woods. Alcohol? What alcohol? If you know what I mean. JPG. Go to the woods on a Friday evening after school. Take some booze and camping equipment from home. Meet friends, 6 exactly, and go for it. We find a nice clearing in the forest. This gun be good. PNG. Set up tents, make fire. We eventually start cooking and drinking beer. Shit, we are Eastern Europeans, beer has no effect. Nobody wants to go get some alcohol because village is far away. Start telling stories, just usual camping stuff. Eat our glorious food, tastes awesome. Nobody wants to sleep because it is overrated. Around 1:30 fire goes low. Damn it, Anons, we need more firewood. Send ridiculously obese friend to get some firewood because he has more body weight, therefore carry more. WTF logic. We sit in a half circle around the low fire. Hear heavy footsteps behind us, roughly about 6 meters. Start joking about obese Anon making stepping sounds like Godzilla. Hear the sound of breaking wood behind us. Finally that obese shit doing something useful. We keep joking like you don't have to cut down the whole forest, Anon. We keep it up until obese Anon shows up. Freaking in front of the half circle, not from behind where the sounds came from. You fat shit, were you behind us? No, I just went in this direction. You guys tried to scare me with your heavy breathing and growling, but I am not scared, you sick freaks. What the fuck did you just say? GIF. Anon, no one went after you. Everyone goes silent and terrified. Hear growling from the direction we heard the footsteps. Everyone stand up and gather around the fire. Bad decision.exe. The fire now lights even smaller area. We back away to not cast so much shadow. We see a pair of eyes as the light hits the woods. Like the cat's eye, just reddish. It backs away and we hear the heavy footsteps again. We have no flashlights. No weapons. And our fire is low. That's just goddamn right. Luckily obese Anon brought some wood for the fire. Make fire as big as possible while we hear constant growling. We check watches. 210. Now that's a problem.txt. We agree that we need parental help. Let's phone a parent. Most of the kids have strict village parents that would beat the shit out of them. My stepfather is really cool, so decide to give it a shot. He arrives an hour later with car. We praise him like a hero. He takes us home. As we pack our stuff into the car, stepfather stops and listens. I thought I heard something, might be because you sick freaks woke me up in the middle of the night. We get into the car and go home. That was horrible. WebM. Part number 3. Be me, 17. As I mentioned in part number 1, we have chickens. I mean all kind of winged bastards that produce eggs and meat. Chickens, goose, ducks, turkey, etc. The heating of the school broke down, so no school held. Yeah. Wake up in the morning. Anon, could you please feed the chickens, says mom. Sure, whatever. Go out, get chicken food from the storage shed. About to feed the chickens when I realize that there is hardly anything left to give food. Enclosure is filled with chicken organs and feathers. Wire fence is torn open from the outside. It's fairly cold, about -20 degrees Celsius or -4 Fahrenheit, but I see the blood is not frozen. Whatever it was, it happened a few minutes before. Hear movement from one of the hen houses. Got you, motherfucker.png. Grab the first thing that lies around and can be used as a weapon. And my axe, but seriously though, it's an axe. First impression is important, so I kick the door in. Not what I expected. Just a dying chicken. One leg is missing. Massive damage on the back. I put it out of its misery. Must have been a fox or something. Revenge time, bitches. See blood trail to the forest. Got you. Grabbed my handy axe and start following the trail. Well, that thing can only be described as the shittiest idea of my life. 20 minutes into forest and chill, get it, because it's cold as hell. Trail disappears at a clearing. Suddenly I feel being watched. I feel really uneasy. I just feel like something is behind me, and whenever I turn around it follows my back to stay out of my sight. Start panicking. Hear growling from the distance. It sounds familiar. But from where? Holy crap, not again. Turn around and start walking haste-paced, mother growler. Few minutes pass. Still feeling extremely uneasy, and I have goosebumps all over my back. Shivers. I stop to listen a bit. Hold my breath. Dead silence. Walking at normal pace now. Notice a pile of branches on the ground. Step over them. I take another step. And another one. Crack. Look down slowly. There is no branch under my feet. World goes slow-mo. I realize that something stepped on the pile of branches 2 steps behind me that was heavy enough to break them. Those were like solid diameter of 8 to 9 centimeters, 3 or 3.5 inches, branches. Shiver-o-saurus down my spine. My arm must have looked like the surface of a basketball. Not today, you dipshit. Start running home as hell. And you think light is fast.exe. Get home. Get my stepdad, tell him the chickens are gone. What happened anon? Invite him outside to show him the half-eaten chicken I put down, God rest her soul. It's gone, and the inside of the henhouse is wrecked as hell, it was not before. And where is my axe anon? Holy crap, I lost it in the forest. Well, that's an interesting story. Docx. No use to lie. Tell him everything. He asked if I did any drugs. Tell him no and swear to anything in the world. Okay, let's find my axe anon. We go together. Find the axe not far from the pile of branches. It has tooth marks all over the handle. We hear the growling again from the distance. What do we do, stepdad of anon? Hear growling once more, from much closer. Run. We storm to the house. After this incident we try to avoid the forest as much as possible. But there is still one part left, anons. Part number 4. After the events of part number 3, we reinforced our enclosure. Now it's all wood and concrete in the forest side and set up a spotlight that is constantly on. Be me, 23. Going to university and only spending weekends at home village. This year, 2016, May 6th Saturday. I know the date because the events left a deep mark in me. So Saturday family time. Mom, stepdad, brother and me decide that we could use some quality time. Let's make some barbecue, guys. Yeah. Well, technically it is not a barbecue, but that is the closer thing to it, and I don't want to go into details. Basically it's open air cooking on fire in the backyard. Evening. Time to cook, hell yeah. Everything goes fine. Alcohol time. We consume alcohol enough to take a space shuttle to Pluto and back. If we were not Eastern Europeans, we probably would be dead by now. But luckily we are, so basically, we just got tipsy and laugh a lot. Sitting around our fire. My cat sits in my lap. Laughing, eating, having freaking good time. I hear scratching sounds all of a sudden and freeze. Ha ha ha, look at Anon. He is shitty ass drunk. Are you a pussy or something? Says brother. Forget you, man, I'm not, comes my snip snap answer. Maybe he is right and it was just my imagination. Hear it again. Ignore it. That was my first mistake. I mentioned that the fence was reinforced. Well, the inside of it is still wire fence. The spotlight was set parallel to the fence and in the same line. I look at the fence and saw something that still haunts my nightmares. Looked like a face, definitely not human. Can only be described as weird-shaped face with small nose, pic-related sorry mad paint skills. It was not covered with fur, or only with very thin. The eyes. Those freaking eyes. Like the cat eyes but red. By the way, our cat, it started to act nervously and ran into the house. I only saw the head because the remaining part remained in the shadows. The head was probably 130 centimeters, 4'3", from the ground. I rubbed my eyes to see if it is there really or not. Yup, it's still there. It's rotating its head. Like it's examining us from the distance. Mom crosses over me and blocks my view. As she passes, I saw it backing away into the darkness. Brother suggests we go in and watch movies. Everyone agrees. Drunk me eventually convinces me that did not really happen. Second mistake. We watch movies and go to sleep. Morning comes, stepdad wakes me up. Anon, I think you better look at this. We go out. Rabbit cages ripped open, 2 rabbits are missing, another 3 are dead. But dead like, what the hell? Skulls crushed open. Brains and left eye missing. What the hell? JPG. The same with all 3. I told them what I saw yesterday. We checked the fence. On the outer side there are claw marks all over. Like real big ones. Nope. JPG. We need some traps. We go and buy the smaller kind of bear traps and chain 4 of them to the fence. Get one of the dead rabbits. Sorry bro, it's for the greater good. Cut it open and fill it up with rat poison. Put it there as bait. Fast forward. Next morning, go to check if our master trap had some effect. With .jpg. Bait is missing. Bear traps are not activated. I poke them with a stick. They snap at the slightest touch. Bruh. We are putting out more and more traps each day, no effect. Rabbits and chickens keep going missing or found with open skull and left eye missing. We eventually decide to move the remaining rabbits and chickens to the basement. Third mistake. First night with chickens and rabbits in the basement, feels good, man. Morning. Stepdad and mom is upset as hell. What's wrong? Turns out our sheep is missing. You can't be serious. JPG. Blood everywhere. We do not feel safe anymore. Whatever can kill and take a sheep of 50 kilograms, 110 pounds, can easily harm humans. We sell the house and move approximately 120 kilometers away into a city. Fast forward to August. Let's visit a friend of mine in Nopeville. Go there by car. We chat about things we did as kids. Asked if anything interesting happened after we moved away. He tells me that a couple with 3 kids bought our house. Nice people, he said. But there was an incident and now the village is mourning. What.jpg? They left the smallest kid, 9-year-old, to play in the backyard. They removed our glorious defense fence, and he went missing. He was never found, only some of his clothes, torn apart and soaked in blood in the forest. Never returned to my village since then. What in the hell can be that creature? I'm still afraid to go into any kind of forest. I just wanted to share this story with someone/X. Parents own some land passed down from my great-grandfather, who bought it as a deer lease around World War I. Grandpa built a log cabin on the land in the late 40s and continued to expand it until the 80s. It's now the size of a small house and has an upper story. Dad modernized it with a septic tank, solar panels, and even paid to run a phone line and internet out there, since a neighbor had service a mile away. Downstairs is the living room/TV room, kitchen, bathroom, and a small study with shelves full of books on hunting, fishing, trapping, etc. As a kid, I used to spend hours reading books on African safaris, Capstick, Celis, etc., and the Foxfire series. Upstairs is 2 bedrooms and a utility closet, the phone line, and batteries for the solar panels. Place is old school and cozy as heck. Love going up there in the summer and for deer season. Dad was always real nervous about me walking around in the woods alone, always made sure I took a dog and a gun, even when I was 10. Told me to come back to the cabin immediately if I saw or heard anything weird. Never saw anything unusual, but as a kid I sometimes got a creepy feeling like I was being watched, and could hear twigs snap in the distance. Usually when that happened the dog would tear after whatever it was and I'd either keep playing or head back. Fast forward to adulthood. College isn't for me. My parents can't pay for it, I sure as hell can't pay for it, and my grades, while decent, aren't good enough to get me a scholarship or anything, so I drop out at my sophomore year, planning to take classes one at a time at the local community college until I have enough credit for a degree. That worked for about 1 semester, then I said screw it and just worked my ass in construction for a year straight. Saved all my money, and since I was living with my parents still, I didn't have much in the way of expenses. Then I got an idea. Hey Dad, I haven't been to the cabin in a while, and I've got plenty of money saved up, nearly 10 grand by then, so I was thinking maybe I'd move out of the house and into the cabin. I'll pay for the utilities. Pretty much just the phone/internet since water was from a well and electricity from solar, do some upkeep, and just sort of rough it on my own for a while. What do ya think? Dad is all for it, thinks it'll teach me self-sufficiency. Mom is worried I'll cut myself chopping firewood and bleed to death where nobody will find me. Naturally, we men veto Mom and I pack all my stuff into my old ass Chevy Blazer, army surplus with rattle can camo. No AC, but it ran like a champ until I totaled it driving on ice last winter, and prepare to head up to the cabin. Dad pulls me aside, tells me to remember to always keep a gun with me at all times and to take both dogs. I was gonna take my dog, a German Shepherd named Kaiser, but he insists I take his Australian Shepherd Baxter as well. Kaiser is young, energetic, etc. Baxter is old, laid back, and half Kaiser's size, but he's definitely top dog and make sure Kaiser knows it. Dad tells me there's dangerous things in the woods and not to be macho. If I get scared, come home immediately. Dangerous? Like what, bears? Bears weren't exactly common around the cabin, but they did wander through occasionally. Sure. Like bears. Have fun, stay safe, call us when you get there. I get up to the cabin and the scenery is beautiful. Both dogs are glad to be out of the car. Unlock the cabin, open all the windows to air the place out, smells like dust and mothballs, and bring my stuff in. Remember to call parents to let them know I got there okay. Cell phone has no service, cabin phone is a freaking rotary phone. Unplug old ass TV in living room, replace with my flat screen from home. Bigger, better picture, and it uses less electricity anyway, so less of a strain on the batteries at night. Grab one of the 2 rifles I brought with me, a Gibbs Quest II Extreme .308 carbine. Basically an Ishapur Lee Enfield SMLE cut down into a jungle carbine, with chrome-lined bore, nickel finish, and a 10-round mag. It's been my dear gun ever since I was 15. Whistle for the dogs and they follow me outdoors. Patrol the property, noting brush that needs cleared out, a wasp nest on one of the deer blinds that needs removed, etc. Nothing unusual, just remote land that hasn't been maintained for most of a year. Head back to cabin to cook dinner and watch a movie. I watched the original The Thing, flanked on either side of the couch by dogs as I eat my chili. Notice both dogs keep lifting their heads and perking their ears like they hear something, but they settle back down after a few seconds. Right at the part where the thing eats the guy's hands when he tries to use the defibrillator, there's a loud bang from the kitchen and dishes clatter all over the floor. Dogs tear into kitchen snarling and barking. I follow them to see WTF. Pot I cook chili in is on the floor, along with a couple pans left out on the counter. How the hell did that happen? Suddenly notice the screen on the window next to the stove is missing. Look out and see it on the ground. The dogs sprint outside like guided missiles, barking and howling, the second I open the door. It's just a raccoon or something trying to get to the chili, whatever. Replace screen, shut window, clean up mess, and call dogs. Dogs come back panting and excited. Go round shutting every downstairs window, then finish watching my scurry movie. Okay, it's late, time to head upstairs for bed. Both dogs follow me and lay on the floor at the foot of the bed. I lay there in the dark listening to the breeze rustling the trees outside and revel in the isolation in nature. Wake up around 3 a.m. and hear a weird warbling noise. It sounds kinda like a bird, but not. More like someone imitating a bird call. Look out window, see nothing but pitch black, roll over and think nothing of it as I go back to sleep. Next day, take my rifle and the dogs with me to chase all the wasps/spiders/ants/whatever out of the deer blinds on the property, clear some brush from the trails, and give up 5 minutes into repairing a wooden footbridge over the creek. I have a couple months to fix it, screw it. Kaiser keeps staring at something off in the distance and snarling. Baxter gives no shits and just chills at my feet the whole time. Head back to cabin, eat lunch, then head out to walk the trails again and see where the deer are moving. Kaiser runs off into the woods barking, Baxter and I follow just for the hell of it. Stumble across what looks like a giant bird nest on the ground made of sticks, leaves, and other crap. It's big enough that I could bed down in it. Both dogs are going crazy, sniffing everywhere. There's a pile of nuts under a nearby bush, like a squirrel was making a cache, and some small bones, probably from a rabbit. Notice a weird, musty smell, but it's faint so I shrug it off. Whatever animal was bedding down here probably won't come back, now that the dogs have tromped all through it and peed all over the landscape. Finally pry dogs away and head back to the cabin. Spend an hour or two, perusing old books in the study. My grandpa used anything and everything for a bookmark, so I'm finding pressed flowers, leaves, old dollar bills, coupons, etc. in the books. Nostalgia settles over me like a comfy blanket. Get hungry and head to the kitchen to cook some beef stew for dinner. Stirring the stew on the stove, suddenly get this creepy feeling. I look up and there's something staring at me through the window not 2 feet away. I literally yell crap, and drop my spoon as I backpedal away from the window. Whatever or whoever it is, it's huge. Shaggy, reddish brown hair, deep-set black eyes under a caveman forehead, head's kind of conical, flat, broad nose. I can tell what the hell it is, it looks kind of like a gorilla. Both dogs come to investigate the disturbance and catch sight/smell of the thing and go ballistic, barking and snarling. Whatever it is, this does not make it happy and it slams a fist against the side of the cabin, knocking a frying pan off the wall. This does not calm the dogs down in the least. I move into the living room to grab my rifle, trying to keep my eye on the thing the entire time. Just as I reach the gun, it stands up. It was at eye level with me looking through the window, so it took me by surprise when it stood up even taller, at least 7, maybe 8 feet. I run back to the window and it's walking away into the trees. Turn on the outside light and open the door. Both dogs take off after it, and it hauls ass into the trees, screeching like a banshee. I fire a shot in the air to discourage it further, then call the dogs. They won't come back. Barking and screeching fade into the distance. I keep calling the dogs. They don't come back for an hour, and when they do they're covered in mud and briars. Get the dogs inside and clean them up, top off rifle, and sit there trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Either it's a prank and that's some guy in a gorilla costume, or a deformed bear came back to try to steal my food again. Between the dogs and the gunshot, it's not coming back. Right? Eat my stew and clean up immediately, so the smell doesn't attract the thing again. Double check that the downstairs is locked up tight and the outside lights are on, basically just porch lights, one outside the kitchen/back door and one outside the front door. Head upstairs and take rifle with me. Dogs stay glued to me the entire time. There's no freaking way I'm staying downstairs where the thing can watch me through the windows. Finally fall asleep as I rationalize that whatever it was, it's gone now. Wake up, no idea what time it is, and there's that warbling, chirping noise again. Whack. The hell? Whack. Look out the window, don't see anything. Whack. Something is hitting the side of the cabin. Both dogs are whining/growling. Shine my flashlight out the window, don't see anything. Turn the light off and wait about 30 seconds. Whack. This time I saw it, a rock bounced off the side of the cabin right below my window. Some asshole is in the tree line throwing rocks at my cabin. Hey, this is my property. I've got a gun. Get the hell out of here before I call the sheriff. Silence for a long minute. Whack. This time the rock hits the window frame a foot from my head. Okay, asshole, you wanna play games? I stick my rifle out the window and fire off a shot in the general direction of where the rocks are coming from. I hear that weird bird call noise again and something big goes tearing through the brush. Nope, screw this. Shut all the upstairs windows, toss my rifle on the bed, and put on my pistol belt. It's time for the heavy artillery. Grab my Imble FAL from the closet, slap in a 20-round mag, and chamber around. Put on headlamp, grab both dogs, and head out the back door into the woods. You're not getting away, asshole, I'll teach you to screw with me. Dogs run off into the dark, barking, and I follow in hot pursuit. About half a mile from the cabin, I'm beginning to rethink this whole run into the woods at night with an unknown creature that is way bigger than me plan. Can see dogs, but I can hear them. They're both definitely chasing something. Hear the loud screech from before. Run to catch up with the dogs, trip on a rock and faceplant, but adrenaline makes me get right back up and keep going without really noticing the fall. Suddenly hear a dog yelp in pain, can't tell which one. Run even faster, shouting for the dogs. Suddenly see something looming on the trail ahead of me. It's Baxter. He's limping and coming back. His left hip is bleeding. Looks like somebody hit him with a rock. Now I'm pissed. Keep heading down the trail to catch up with Kaiser. Baxter limps along beside me. Loud screeching and Kaiser barking seems to indicate he may have whatever it is cornered or treed. I'm almost there when something whizzes through the air and almost hits me. That came from a different direction than the screeching and barking. Oh no, there's two of them. I fire a shot in the general direction of where the rock came from and call for Kaiser. Baxter won't leave my side now. A big stick flies through the air and lands at my feet. I can see where it came from with just my headlamp. Fire another shot and decide screw this, I'm heading back to the cabin. Keep firing shots occasionally to keep whatever is throwing things at me at bay. Can hear it crashing through the brush off to my left as it follows me down the trail. Kaiser is still barking and won't come when called. Nearly back to the cabin when I hear Kaiser yelp. Call his name for the umpteenth time, hear something crashing through the brush and aim my rifle at the noise. Kaiser appears at Mach 2 and runs right past me and keeps going. Thanks, asshole, just leave me for dead. I fire another shot down the trail to discourage pursuit, then haul ass back to the cabin, Baxter right on my heels. Kaiser is waiting for me, whining and scratching at the door to be let in. This is a big dog, one that's taken on and killed the coyote that got in our yard one time. What the hell has him so scared? We all three pile into the cabin, I reload my rifle, and check the dogs. Baxter has a nasty bruise where the rock hit him, but only a little bit of bleeding. Kaiser appears unarmed, but something scared the crap out of him. I run upstairs, barricade the door behind me, and open the windows so I can shoot at anything approaching from that side of the house. Crap, I should call my dad or the sheriff, but the phone's downstairs. Forget that. I hear rustling of the tree line and more of that warbling noise, but nothing comes out where I can see it and no more rocks are thrown at my cabin. I finally relax and start to feel safe around dawn. With no sleep and the adrenaline wearing off, I hang my gun belt on the corner of the bed, lean both rifles against the wall, and go to sleep. Wake up around noon, make a sandwich for lunch, and think about my situation. Whatever they are, escaped circus gorillas, Bigfoot, mutant bears, whatever, there's at least 2 of them and they're both big. They're also not particularly friendly, but I also get the impression they're a lot less of a threat than they could be if they wanted to. I think they're more harassing me in revenge for scaring them off with dogs and gunshots when one of them tried to reach through the window and steal my food. I decide to set a trap. Empty an old, musty bag of deer corn on the ground, spread it around and leave a pile of it right where I can aim perfectly from the bedroom window. Then I pour a can of soup onto the pile as additional bait and head back inside. Hopefully they take the bait and I can shoot one and bring it back as proof / to find out what the hell they are. Keep my gun belt on an FAL in arm's reach all day, just in case they come back in the daylight. Watch movies all day, looking out the window to check the bait pile every few minutes. Both dogs are nervous, but don't seem to have anything actively setting them off. They stick to me like Velcro all day. Night arrives and I go round double-checking all the downstairs doors and windows are locked. I set up in the bedroom window with a perfect view of the bait pile and wait in ambush. An hour or so into my vigil, and I notice the outside light is getting dim. No, what? Why? Suddenly, I realize that I had all the lights in the cabin on all of last night, all day, and today, and it was cloudy and overcast so the solar panels were charging the battery very well with all the lights and the TV running. Damn it. I go to the utility closet between the bedrooms to check the batteries, and they're almost dead. Even if I shut off all the lights except the 2 outside lights, they won't last long. Well, that's what generators are for. This noise may scare the critters away, it might not. I head downstairs, shutting off lights as I go, and brace myself. The generator is on the front porch, in a little enclosure so nobody steals it. I have to go outside to start it. I open the door and shoo the dogs outside, they seem to indicate that there isn't anything around for the moment. Set my rifle down, unlock generator enclosure, flip all the right switches, and yank the pull cord. Other than when I first got to the cabin and ran it to make sure it worked, it hasn't been started in months, so it takes 6 tries before it starts up. Grab rifle, call dogs, and head back inside. I go into the kitchen and flip the switch that switches from solar/battery power to generator power. The inside lights are all turned off, but the outside lights are still on and suddenly go from very dim to full power. The kitchen window is dark. Something is blocking the light. One of the things is hunched over and peering through the window, trying to see inside. I stifle a shout, aim my rifle right at its face, and fire 5 or 6 rounds as fast as I can pull the trigger. I must have jerked the trigger, because the window exploded in a spray of glass and the thing howled like I hit it, but instead of dying from a gunshot wound to the face it turned and ran off into the woods. I run to the window and look outside, but see nothing. More warbling and what sounds very like a person moaning in pain and sobbing is coming from the tree line. Nope. I'm done. Screw this, I'm out. Seriously, I'm not doing this anymore. Run out the front door with both dogs, lock the cabin behind me, jump in the Blazer, and haul ass into town where I can get some cell reception. Immediately call my dad and tell him everything. He says he's coming out to meet me and to stay put. 2 hours later, my dad pulls up to the truck stop I've been waiting at, has me repeat the story to him again, and then follows me out to the cabin. The generator is still running and the outside lights are on. We clear the cabin and there are no intruders. Then we send the dogs outside. They mill around outside the kitchen window and near the bait pile, but don't seem to think anything is around. Dad finds some blood under the window and follows a trail of it to the tree line. He's smarter than me and doesn't go into the woods in the dark. We clean up the broken glass and board up the window. Dad swaps a shotgun for my Gibbs rifle that I left upstairs, and we discuss what the hell was going on. He mentions that he's seen them twice. Once he saw a small one as a kid. He was running around playing like I did, and he came across it drinking at the creek. It hooted like a monkey and ran off. He wasn't sure if it was his imagination or if he really saw it, but either way it wasn't much bigger than he was at the time and had run away, so it didn't seem dangerous. He changed his mind years later when he was an adult. He was in a tree blind waiting for a deer and a full-grown one stepped out of the trees and started eating his deer corn. He was debating shooting it and proving the existence of Bigfoot when it noticed him and walked over to the tree. Then it reached up and nearly touched his foot. This thing was tall. Dad panicked and threw a full can of beer at it, missing. It reached for him again, chattering like a bird or a monkey, and he grabbed a second beer out of his mini cooler and this time he beamed it on the head. It howled and ran off into the trees where he couldn't see it, then started throwing rocks and sticks at him. He fired a shot to scare it off, climbed down from the blind, and ran back to the cabin. He'd never seen it again since, but knowing it was out there always freaked him out, which is why he always had me take a dog and a gun with me as a kid. He never told anyone what he'd seen because he didn't want them to think he was crazy or make fun of him for being drunk and seeing things. Well, now 2 of us had seen the damn things. They didn't come back all that night, and we headed into town to get a replacement window when morning came. We made sure the cabin was secure, put all my stuff in the Blazer, and drove home. We didn't go back until deer season. There was no sign that things had tried breaking into the cabin since we left. Haven't seen or heard them since, never tried to follow the blood trail in the daylight, so I have no idea how seriously I wounded it. Now, here's what I saw/heard. Thing was about 7 or 8 feet tall, wide, and muscular. Like a gorilla, but it stood upright like a person. Head was conical, bullet-shaped, it had deep-set black eyes with a heavy brow, like a stereotypical caveman or gorilla. Flat, broad nose, mouth stuck out like an ape's or a black person's. I never saw its teeth, and it had small jug ears that stuck out the side of its head. It was covered head to toe in rust-colored, reddish-brown hair, long and coarse-looking. It didn't seem to have hair on its face or hands, but it was dark and I wasn't really focusing on details since I was scared shitless, so I can say for certain. I definitely noticed this musty, wet animal smell whenever it was nearby, but not the strong rotting garbage smell other people report when describing similar creatures. It just smelled like a dirty animal. Vocalizations were bird-like warbling, chirping noise, a loud hooting noise like a chimp, and ear-splitting screeches that I really can't compare to anything else I've ever heard. At no time did it sound like intelligible speech or a human voice. This was definitely an animal. There were definitely 2, since Kaiser had one cornered and another was throwing things at me, but I never saw more than one at a time and don't know if I saw the same one every time or if it was a different one at different times. The only signs of intelligent/tool usage were when they threw rocks and sticks at me/the cabin. I assume they're also what made the nest of sticks and leaves on the ground, but can't say for certain. They seemed attracted to my chili and beef stew, but didn't take the soup and deer corn bait I put out for them. Maybe because I wasn't cooking and spreading the smell of food, or maybe because they didn't want the bait. I was scared shitless, but even at the time I didn't think they really wanted to hurt me. They just wanted to steal my food and harassed me by throwing stuff. Questions? Hey/X, this is the first time I've come to this board, and I have 3 Australian stories to share. I normally do not share my stories with anyone except close friends and family because, to be honest, they make me sound like an absolute crackpot. A friend of mine urged me to post here, as it allows me to remain anonymous, and this community seems, perhaps too, open-minded. Before I start with the stories, I'll give a bit of background on myself. I'm a 29-year-old guy living on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. For those that may know the area, I grew up just outside of Rathdoney on a 600-acre property, which has been in my family since the area was first colonized by Europeans. I moved to the Gold Coast when I was 20 to allow my fiancée, now my wife, to further her career in finance. My skill set was mostly limited to aquaponics maintenance and fish care, which I found was next to useless in the city, so I turned my attention to my true passions, writing and fishing. I was soon picked up by one of Australia's largest fishing magazines, which led me on countless fishing trips around the country. It was on these trips that these stories occurred, and also the reason I've taken the screen name of Aussie Fish Journal for these posts. I drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes, but I was not drunk during the events that happened in these stories, and I do not take any recreational or prescription drugs. The first story I'll share with you happened in 2009, in northeastern New South Wales. I was doing an article on the recently rehabilitated Clarence River cod in the area, and basically had a week to travel an entire river system by kayak and tag as many cod as I could. This trip was purposefully correlated with a full moon, on the last night, as it would provide the best conditions for targeting cod with surface lures throughout the night. For anyone who may be interested, the trip itself was, for all intents and purposes, a complete failure as I only managed to catch 4 cod, all neonatal and tagged from a previous restocking program. However, it was the occurrence on the last night of the trip that I will be sharing with you. I keep a tight journal on all of these trips as it allows me to add personal and anecdotal insight when writing articles, as well as ensuring that I do not forget to include any important details or events. This is, word for word, but only including pertinent details, a copy of what I wrote in my journal that night. With a tally of 8 bass, 2 tendons, a spangled perch and a foul-hooked eel, today was another codless day. The entire camping area above the falls was taken by a cavalcade of caravans, and I settled for a small patch of cleared shrubbery below the falls, but far enough away that I would not be in danger of flooding, and so that the crashing water would not keep me awake. 3 curlews entered camp shortly after I was set up, and I offered them some cooked perch, but they would not take it, even after I threw it well out of arm's reach. Odd to see them in this area. Moonrise tonight will occur around midnight, and I will do my best to wake up, throw surface lures at every eddy I can find. Conditions are still comfortable but cold, no clouds or rain. Water is flowing reasonably hard over the falls, but the depth is significantly lower than it was 4 months ago. That was the final entry for the trip, as the next morning I was in no mind to write down the following events. Again, I will try to keep it as concise as possible without missing important details. I woke to my watch's alarm at 11:30 p.m. without worry, and made the short walk to the base of the falls. Moonrise was still at least half an hour away, but I decided to have a few exploratory casts, mostly just to try to warm up as the temperature was around the 4 Celsius mark. On the 4th or 5th cast I managed to snag up on something near the other side of the creek. Instead of shining my light over the creek and ruining my chances of catching a fish over the next half an hour, I decided to wait for the moon to rise so I could see where was stuck and retrieve it the following morning. I sat down and had a cigarette and tried to stay warm. I considered going back to camp, but I knew this was my last decent chance to tag a few cod, so decided to sit there and shiver until the moon rose. What happened next is a classic cliché. As it was long after summer, the roar of the cicadas wasn't present, but insects, frogs and other nocturnal animals created a much quieter but, in my opinion, much prettier symphony that would fill the night air. Just as the first rays of light from the moonrise had come over the falls and illuminated the creek, I noticed that the faunal noises were non-existent. The only sound present was that of the running water, and I sat there with a certain curious suspiciousness. It is a hard feeling to explain, one where something just feels off but you can't figure out what it is. I was feeling pretty spooked and decided that it wasn't worth hanging around for a $15 lure, so I grabbed my rod and was ready to make my way back to camp. I took one last look at the falls, and that's when I saw it. There was a large, thin object at the top of the falls, illuminated by the moon. It was definitely not there during the day, and my first thought is that it was a large tree or huge group of branches that had been washed down the river overnight. And then it stood up. This thing was between 6 and 8 meters tall, incredibly thin and very human-like in shape with arms much longer than a human has. I am, by no means, an artist but have attached a picture here of what it looked like in the moonlight. It slowly raised its arms into the air, as though it was reaching to the moon itself, and that's when I noticed two of the same creatures standing beside it. I'm not sure if they were there the whole time. I didn't notice because I was fixated on the one in the center, or if they appeared as it raised its arms. All three of these things had their arms raised into the air for a few seconds before completely vanishing. It took me a second to realize they had disappeared because their silhouette against the moonlight was that strong. It had made an imprint on my sight, similar to when you look at the sun and see sunspots in your vision for a few seconds after. This next part was by far the most disconcerting event of the night. Anyone who has ever been out in a thunderstorm at night will know how surreal it is when a bolt of lightning illuminates the world around you for a split second. For that minute amount of time you can see everything in a bright white light, almost as though a giant spotlight has been cast upon you. Well, a few seconds after the things vanished, the moon had just made its way completely over the top of the falls, and suddenly it was like daytime. For 4 or 5 seconds I could see everything around me in a strange white light, similar to the lightning effect I just mentioned but lasting long enough that I could look around the entire area. Forgot the picture in my previous post so attached it here. The only real detail I managed to notice over this period of light was 3 curlews standing together on a small platform near the base of the falls about 20 meters away from my position. I think the only reason my brain recognized that they were there was because they stood out so well against the water and rock face behind them. And just like that the light was gone, the bush once again only lit up by the moonlight. I stood there in shock of everything I had just seen for at least 5 seconds before a long, whistling sound jolted me back to reality, the song of the curlews. It's quite a spooky call at the best of times and, given the situation, was too much for me. I dropped my rod and raced back to camp, scrounged every piece of wood I could find in the immediate area and built a fire up as large as I could. Well, that's basically it for that story. Nothing else eventful happened. I retrieved my rod, but not my lure, the next morning, traveled downriver and got picked up via 4x4 around 11 a.m., as was previously planned. In hindsight, I wish I had spoken to the caravanners camped above the falls to see if they saw anything that night. I later did a little bit of research and found that large, thin humanoids play a large part in Aboriginal culture from all over the country, often in the form of things like quinkins. That was my first experience with how weird the Australian bush can be, and in all honesty, I stayed away from remote places for quite a while afterwards. However, in the next story that I'll tell, I found that odd things can happen in quite populated areas. This next story happened on one of the many Moreton Bay Islands in southeast Queensland. I normally will be happy to divulge the locations of where my stories have occurred, but in this case I was asked by the locals, one person in particular, not to tell anyone which island it was. I will say that it is in the southern part of Moreton Bay and has an expanse of mud flats. The Moreton Bay region has quite a history, along with some well-entrenched folklore, everything from leper colonies to escaped convicts becoming cannibals and many wars between Aboriginals and European settlers. It is a relatively highly populated area and borders Queensland's capital city of Brisbane. I was here to get some photos for an article about fishing with bait on inshore shallow reefs, and hoped that I'd be able to cast net a large amount of bait fish, such as pike, mullet, garfish and whiting, for bait rigging photos. This particular area was largely unfamiliar to me, but I decided my best bet of catching bait would be to spotlight the mudflats and mangrove areas on the 10 p.m. high tide. I was being helped by an older bloke who had just started a charter boat business in Moreton Bay, and I'd promised to give him some free advertising in the magazine if he could get me onto some good fish the following morning. We headed down to the flats around 9 p.m. and began wading through the murky waters, both with a cast net in our hand and a cigarette in our mouth. This is fairly customary in this part of the world, as it is the only surefire way of guaranteeing the mosquitoes and midges stay well away from your face. We were both wearing strongly powered headlamps, around the 1000 lumen mark, which were only turned on a few seconds before throwing the net, otherwise you risk spooking the fish. The rest of the time we were in darkness, out 100 meters from the shore in knee-deep water. Your mind tells you that every rock you step on is a stonefish and every piece of seagrass that touches your leg is a bull shark that's coming to check out its net feed, so it's a bit of an adrenaline rush. From memory, we were doing quite well within the first half an hour and had 20 or so garfish and a few pike, both perfect snapper baits. We decided to head back to the shore to roll a few more cigarettes and put our captured fish into an esky in the back of my ute. We were almost back when my friend said, "There's someone at the ute." I looked up and could just make out a faint shadow of what looked to be somebody crouched down near the back of my ute. This wasn't totally odd, as there is a permanent population of 120 or so people on the island, but the fact that they were snooping around in the darkness made me very suspicious. My friend and I whispered about what to do and decided that we'd walk through the water as quietly as possible until we were 10 meters away from the ute. Then we'd hit it with our headlamps at full power, and ask this person exactly what they thought they were doing prowling around our car in the middle of the night. I carry a multi-tool on my belt at all times when I'm fishing, mostly to dispatch fish and cut line. In this case it was my Leatherman Surge, which has a reasonably sized knife inbuilt, and although I had no intention or expectation about choosing it, having it with me did make me feel a little bit better about confronting our prowler. Well, we got about 10 meters away from my ute, and I patted my friend on the shoulder to signal, "Let's do it." Both headlamps came on, fully illuminating a 20-meter area right around the vehicle. What was staring back at us was shocking. This prowler was certainly not human. Standing on two legs about 130 centimeters high, it seemed to be covered in either dense hair or a very heavy coating of mud. In an instant it turned to us, let out a yelp, very similar to a noise made by a dog in pain, and took off into the mangrove trees which bordered the east of the mud flats. Its movements were not a run or a walk, it seemed to glide or hover straight towards the mangroves and disappeared into them as soon as it reached the tree line. I only caught a split-second look at its face, but it did not seem ape-like, as is often the case in Yowie and Bigfoot stories, but more like a dog but with less of a snout. Quite hard to explain and definitely too hard for me to draw. Its eyes were hugely reflective, it was almost like the light from our headlamps had hit two small mirrors and was directed back at us. We were both understandably quite shocked from the incident and threw our gear into the back of the ute and drove to the most well-lit part of the island, a small grassy park near the pub. We did not check for prints or anything in the area as, honestly, we just wanted to get the hell out of there. The next night we quietly and almost embarrassedly asked the bartender if there were any wild dogs or similar animals on the island, hoping for a rather menial explanation for the prowler we had encountered. His facial expression formed what would be best explained as a wry smile, and replied with, "No dogs, but there are mangrove men." He directed our attention to an old bloke in the back of the bar, and told us to ask him about them. My fisherman friend was quite tired from a full day out in the boat, and decided to call it a night, and I had another drink alone before getting the courage to talk to the old man in the corner. The conversation that ensued was one of the most interesting ones I've ever had, and I will condense it into a few points. The prowler we had witnessed the previous night was a mangrove man, called a Junjari by local Aboriginal groups. In the past they were present in the entire Moreton Bay region, but destruction of mangroves has resulted in them now inhabiting only 4 islands. They, or something very similar, also live in the mountain regions on the mainland. I am not sure if he was talking about Yowies, as we know them in popular culture, 6 to 10 feet tall, or smaller creatures like the one I saw. They haven't been known to harm humans, but are apparently quite mischievous, and the one near my ute was probably looking for fish or food. The Aboriginals do not consider them to be an animal or a spirit, but somewhere in between. They are well known to many of the locals in the area, many have seen them, but many only believe them to be folklore. The old man I was speaking to had built up somewhat of a rapport with the Junjaris, often leaving them food or toys, with their favorite toy apparently being squash balls. It was all quite a shock to me. The fact that these things were living in areas close to the largest city in Queensland just seemed ridiculous, but I cannot just ignore what I saw. My friend's charter business is doing quite well these days, and I try to have a fish with him at least 3 or 4 times a year, but we have only spoken about that night once since it happened. He has never told another person about it for fear of sounding like he's insane, which is totally understandable. I have returned to island many times since but have not seen anything else out of the ordinary, and on my last trip in early 2014, I was informed that the old man I spoke to had passed away. I honestly can't help but feel incredibly privileged to have seen something that doesn't exist, and it really changed how I view a lot of things in life. This is the last story I have for you guys. A friend of mine runs an eel farm just north of Brisbane, and whenever I get the chance, I like to help him out. Now, the farming of eels isn't a particularly difficult process when utilizing modern technology, but it isn't possible to breed them in captivity. Their life cycle is actually quite amazing. All the freshwater eel species in Australia actually migrate tens of thousands of kilometers to the Coral Sea to breed, and then their eggs and larvae float back to mainland Australia on the ocean's currents. What this means is that all farmed eels are caught as wild stock, generally collected in their larval form in sophisticated eel traps. However, my friend also offers an eel removal service, where he'll remove mature eels from a water body for a fee. Normally he'll do this at golf courses or council-owned parks, but occasionally he'll do it for privately owned farm dams who are looking to remove the eels, in order to stock more edible species of fish, which is where this story begins. We were setting eel traps on a property located in the Numamba Valley, southeast Queensland. This is largely considered to be the westernmost geographical limit of freshwater eels in the region, as they rarely find a way to cross over the Great Dividing Range that runs up the East Australian coastline. This generally means that individual eels are few and far between in this area, but if conditions are suitable, you may get huge populations of very large eels in very small areas. These small areas are generally farm dams, miniature lakes that are built to supply water for small-scale agriculture processes. Because of the high amount of nutrients in the runoff from the agriculture, there is often large amounts of algal growth, resulting in populations of herbivorous fish and then eventually carnivorous fish, and in most cases these carnivores are eels. The property we were on was in an absolutely stunning area, nestled in a hidden valley between a few of the many unnamed hilltops in the area with a creek running through the middle. We were camped in swags at the edge of the farm dam, and it was damn cold at night, often dropping into the low single digits. Not the most hospitable conditions, but great for trapping eels, as food sources are much scarcer in winter than they are in the warmer months. I have attached a mud map to this post. Where the green represents the tree line at the base of the hills, the brown is relatively flat ground with grasses and a few eucalypts, the darker blue is the farm dam, The lighter blue is the creek that feeds it and the red X is where we were camped. The creek itself is only about 15 meters wide at its widest point, but more than 2.5 m in some sections, which is quite a considerable depth for waterways in this area. We'd set the eel traps in the dam in the late afternoon, cooked some dinner on the fire after nightfall and fell asleep around 9 p.m. I woke up at around 1 a.m. to answer a call of nature, haphazardly got dressed in my swag and stumbled into the freezing night air. I walked about 50 meters from camp to a eucalypt tree, finished what I had to, and just as I was about to walk back, it seemed like the whole top of the nearest hill was lit up with an incredible blue light. It seemed to almost swirl around this hill, like a quick-moving mist, but it didn't seem to be produced from anywhere in particular, nor was it actually illuminating anything in particular. Sounds funny, but it was just kind of there. I stood there for at least 2 minutes watching it just sitting near the top of the hill before, almost mesmerized by it, before it slowly just faded away and it was like never there. I was quite perplexed by this, and in the back of my mind I was definitely thinking about the strange light I saw at the base of the falls in northern New South Wales, the first story I told, and truth be told I was feeling very spooked. When I arrived back at camp my friend was wide awake, sitting up in his unzipped swag. I accidentally startled him pretty badly as he thought I was still in my swag, and as soon as he'd calmed down he said, "Did you see it?" I immediately thought he was talking about the blue light, and replied with yes, but I was quite taken aback when he then asked, "Did you see its face?" His story, as he told it, went like this. He was awakened by some disturbance, which was likely me getting out of my swag, and he lay there for a minute or two before deciding that he, too, needed to answer a call of nature. Just as he had unzipped his swag and sat up, he saw somebody across the other side of the dam. He initially thought it might have been me checking the eel traps and he was quite annoyed because they're supposed to be left undisturbed until morning. He was about to yell out to me when the person he could see came into the moonlight. They walked to the farm dam in an odd manner. He said they seemed to push their chest out with each step in a pulse-like motion, bent down at the edge and pulled in the eel trap by the rope. They then picked the trap up and started walking back towards the creek away from the dam. Now, at this point he was beginning to think that it was someone who had traveled up the creek and was trying to poach his eels and traps, so he yelled out to them at the top of his lungs to, and I quote, "Drop that shit." In a split second the person dropped the trap, went down on its hands and knees and turned directly towards my friend in a lizard-like motion, and the effect it had on him was incredible. He says it was almost like this thing's face was telescopic and it jumped out at him from the other side of the dam. NB, by this point in the story he was beginning to sob, and I was telling him to stop talking and calm down a bit, but he continued with the story anyway. He seemed to be in serious shock. He was literally frozen with fear when the face jumped at him, and the creature then turned away towards the creek, where he described its movements to be very similar to that of a crocodile entering the water. A few interesting notes. Again, I'm not an artist but have attempted to draw the face as he explained. See attached picture. I'm not sure if the red lines above the mouth are whiskers or another facial structure, and from memory, he wasn't sure either. I never heard him yell out to the creature even though I was only about 50 meters away from camp. I think it's a fair assessment that the lights I saw and the creature my friend saw were connected in some way. It was a new moon that night, so it wasn't possible for the creature to be illuminated by moonlight as my friend explained. The only explanation I can think of is that the lights I saw somehow illuminated it. At sunrise the eel trap was out of the water on the ground between the farm dam and creek, but I did not find any footprints or marks at all around it despite the ground being a soft clay. To me personally, this adds credence to my friend's story, because if he moved the trap, and faked serious shock, in order to make up a scary story to tell me, then his footprints would undoubtedly be around the trap. I sat with him for the rest of the night and he calmed down a bit and we left about an hour after first light. I gathered up the eel traps but released the eels as I didn't have the knowledge of how to store or transport them in the tank on friend's truck, and he just wanted to get off the property as quick as possible. I didn't tell him about the lights I saw, and he never asked why I answered yes to his first question if I didn't see the creature. I still go out and collect eels with him occasionally, but he will not talk about what happened that night at all. I did speak to an Aboriginal auntie, whose family has lived in the area for literally thousands of years, and she basically just went yeah, but yep. Completely nonchalantly, as if what I experienced was an everyday occurrence. I didn't want to press her too hard for information, but basically they are similar to Junjaris, which this tribe calls Juligers, in that they are an animal-spirit hybrid. However, these bunyips are much more malevolent, and if given the chance will drag you into the water and down into a spirit world where they live. To be taken with a grain of salt perhaps, but very interesting all the same. Well these are my stories. Like I said in the beginning, I don't expect you to believe them, most people don't. I do hope you enjoyed them though, and if you have any questions then feel free to ask. I have a couple of other anecdotal things that have happened to me over the years that I might type out either tonight or some other time. Lastly, I'd just like to apologize for any grammar and spelling errors. I did double check, but it's likely that a couple may have slipped through. I'd also like to apologize for the spelling of the Aboriginal words. I basically spelled them phonetically as I have never seen them actually written down.